This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. You know, I was having a conversation with some people about the Cavs, and I know this is a weird way to start off a Browns video, but keep with me. There's a point to all of this. I was having a conversation about the Cavs, and in this conversation, I was reminded about how everything is a process and how you have to be patient. You have to let things play out. You have to kind of let things bake in the oven. And then after that conversation, I started thinking about the Browns. And what's interesting about the Browns is no team in this city has spent more time in the oven than the Cleveland Browns. Right, you had the Cleveland Guardians. Yeah, they be in that oven all the time, but they be cooking. Like they be pulling out finished products. Right, you had the 2007 team, obviously the teams in the 90s, the teams that almost won the World Series in 2016. So right now, where you have a very good Cleveland Guardians baseball team. You look at the Cavs, and yeah, they spent a lot of time in the oven, and right now they're currently in the oven, but they're still cooking up stuff. The Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, we've had some microwave success like 2007, but as far as time in the oven, we've been in that oven for 20 years? And it dawned on me while having this conversation, while reflecting on this conversation, that the Cleveland Browns might actually be out the oven. And it's funny because we spent 20 years talking about how the Browns are always rebuilding. We've been rebuilding since 1999. We've been rebuilding since whatever year the Browns last won a championship in the 60s. Those jokes have existed in Browns world forever. And the reason they've stuck, especially the rebuilding since 1999 jokes, is because it's kind of been true. This team, while not under a consistent rebuild, we've been under somebody's rebuild for a very long time. Every 2 years, it felt like we were entering a new rebuild, but most certainly at the beginning of a rebuild. Almost so much so that once we finally got out those first couple of steps of a rebuild, we tend to get excited, right? I think that's what 2020 was, right? The Browns took a step forward out of that first infancy step of a rebuild, and we got excited, but we weren't done yet. I look at this Browns roster, and I see Myles Garrett is 27. Deshaun Watson's 28. Nick Chubb's 28. A lot of your best players, 25, 26 years old or older. And it just hit me. And I don't know if it hit you guys earlier, but it just hit me. The Browns finally got out that damn oven. The Browns are no longer rebuilding. We're no longer hoping to see positive signs this year that will lead to next year. And as much fun as we had last year, the second that Deshaun Watson went out for the year is when that season became more about the next year than the current year that was going on. But this team, they should be finally out the oven. Think about that if you've been a Browns fan for any period of time longer than 4 years. The Cleveland Browns are out the oven. They're no longer rebuilding. And I want to be very clear on what that means, because I think a lot of people have a lot of different ideas on what rebuilding means. What I mean by the Browns are done rebuilding is that the players you aim to get at the beginning of the rebuild have reached maturity. The assets that you've traded for at different points of this rebuild, whether it be draft picks, whether it be players, whether it be coaches, whether it be GMs, have reached maturity. The reason this team wasn't out the oven in 2020 was the core group of players were still early 20s to mid 20s and still were like 23, 24-year-olds for the most part. You still had a first year head coach and general manager. You were by no means done cooking that rebuild. It was just a fantastic result early on in a rebuild that gave you a positive feeling about where this could go. And the same can be said for last year, because yes, while the success was great last year, through the injuries, you had the injuries, just no way you can consider a team that has 26% of their salary cap on injured reserve to be a finished product. It's clearly missing a ton of ingredients. It might be a render of what the finished product could feel like. It might be an example of what could happen to encourage you to push forward and finish the rebuild, but it's not the product itself. This team was never once envisioned to be quarterbacked by Joe Flacco or to be anchored by a run game that's led by Jerome Ford. We know what this team was built for. This team was built around Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb and eventually Deshaun Watson. And when you look at this roster, I've said it before, the excuses are done. I think this is why I'm excited about the season. I think this is why a lot of people are excited, semi-anxious, but excited. And that's because the rebuild, it's done. We have finally, for the first time since 1999, have gotten through a whole rebuild. Think about that, Browns fans. Like, seriously, think about that one. We finally got through a rebuild. How many times? We've never done it since 1999. We've never done it. Never done it. This is the first full rebuild that we have. And you know how I know it's the first full rebuild that we have? This is the first time we've had this level of continuity on the roster. This is the first time we've had this level of continuity in the front office. This is the first time we've had this level of continuity in the coaching staff. This is the first time we've had this level of continuity in ownership, right? Like, people forget about that part, right? We've been through 1, 2, 3. We have been on our fourth owner since Art Modell sold the team. 4 owners, a ton of coaches, a ton of general managers, a ton of team presidents, a ton of different directions, a ton of different rebuilds. The under construction sign for the retail project that is the Cleveland Browns is done. It's like a video game that's been in development for 20 years. It's finally like done. It's not in beta. It's not a demo. It's a game that's about to be released. It's not green light or whatever they call it on Steam. It is a final product. And final products are that. They're final. We're going to find out if these players are as good as we think they are. We're going to find out if this core is good enough to win a championship. Because this team is not waiting to be good enough in a couple of years to win a championship. This team is built around the belief that the players you have on this roster right now, the core players, those guys are good enough to get you a championship. We're going to find out if that's true. We're going to find out if that's true. I know for me, this is the best I've ever felt about it in my entire life being a Browns fan. But that's what this season is about. The construction tape is off. The rebuild is done. We have finally lived through as Browns fans, a full rebuild of this team. And let's be real about it. It's a better rebuild than most teams get. I feel like they have the opportunity to do that, but I don't know. We all don't know. Nobody knows except for the alternate universe me that got the leak script. That guy does know, but everybody else does not know. By the way, go check that video out. Here's why the Browns are fortunate, right? And why this rebuild is better than most. In most rebuilds, you do not get access to a player like Myles Garrett. You do not get an access to a player like Nick Chubb. You do not get access to a quarterback who has at least had a Pro Bowl history like Deshaun Watson. We'll see if he lives up to that Pro Bowl pedigree, but a lot of rebuilds have had a lot worse at the quarterback position, right? We could have easily rebuilt this team and been out here trying to lug along Zach Wilson like the Jets have. Like, there's been worse. I know people want to be doom and gloom about the quarterback position. And look, it's not like having Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. We would feel much better if Deshaun Watson were producing at that level. There is still a good chance that Deshaun Watson can play back to the level that he previously demonstrated he could play as a pro football player. You are fortunate. This rebuild is better than most. This is a really good chance. You have some generational players on this team. And I think we are also fortunate that this is the first time since 1999 that we've gotten one, generational players outside of Joe Thomas, and two, are in the position to capitalize on the prime of a generational player. Say what you want about the Cleveland Browns, but you cannot tell me that Andrew Berry did not try to capitalize off the primes of Nick Chubb and Myles Garrett. He risked a lot to try to capitalize on those primes. And that's kind of what you want from a GM, a guy who knows what time it is. And Andrew Berry has known what time it is. But that's where we are, right? The tough job for Andrew Berry was the first 2 to 3 years of him being the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. For these next couple of years, he's going to be looking to maintain what he's built. And then after that, he's going to have to tear everything down and build a whole new thing. But think about that. We got through the first rebuild. There's a lot to feel good about. As Browns fans who have never gotten to that point, you should feel great about that. Now it's time to see if the team can live up to those expectations. It's going to be interesting to watch. I'm super excited. The more and more I see these damn football clips on my timeline, the more I see those beautiful new helmets that they have, the more excited I get, the more I think about the potential of this team, and the more I realize how thankful I am to be able to watch a Browns team that finished a rebuild. And to people who aren't Browns fans, that's going to sound ridiculous, but I promise you, if you lived through 20 years of your team never getting through a rebuild, you would feel euphoric if you got the opportunity to finally bask in the warm glow that is a finished rebuild. We'll see what they do. There's a lot of opinions about what this team can do based on the quarterback or based on them staying healthy. Some people think that they're just going to have bad luck because they're in Cleveland. But the rebuild is done. We'll see what happens. I'm super excited. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.